geography of the executive complex. We want to know who knew what when.
I understand that.
So my question is, so I will ask that directly. Forget about the technical questions. Mr. Nunez was on the campus. You say we don't know who let him in the gate, so
right.
Apparently it is, and you described, I believe this is a normal process, right? Tell me if it is normal the way that I am describing it. Mr. Nunez, the head of an investigatory committee, is allowed to roam around the executive complex, we don't know who let him in, to speak to two deputy-level members of the National Security Council. He is then allowed to see information. He then obtains an appointment, from my understanding of the chronology, with the President of the United States to disgorge that information. He then goes public with that information. Then 7 or so days later, you say it would be appropriate for everybody to come down here and look at it. Is that a normal process?
Well, I would take issue with a number of the aspects of your chronology. Number one, which you're forgetting, is that initially he is the one that publicly said, well before any of this came to light in terms of the president's March 5th tweet, that he was just looking into this whole matter. He, according to John Roberts' his own reporting, just said that neither of those individuals, as described in your paper's reporting, are accurate. So I would dispute several of the pieces of that. And then as far as him roaming around the White House. No, I understand this, but you, again, you jump to a ton of conclusions about, and again, I love watching some of these shows where they jump to conclusions for all. Hold on.
Several times prejudged the investigation is clearing the White House. You've said it twice at the podium today.
Right.
So we're
what
not
I'm saying is
prejudging.
because I'm focused on the substance of this, Glenn. I'm actually, right. And so where's any of the reporting been in your paper about Evelyn Faucus and her revelation that this is what they sought to do? Where has been the reporting in your paper that NBC News just recently covered, that other officials? You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunez has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Did the Chief of Staff, who is, in my understanding, an exceptionally attentive gatekeeper to who comes in and out of the Oval Office, did the Chief of Staff know that he was on the campus? Did he approve his?
So remember, you're okay, but you're playing cute there. You're doing two things. One is you're talking about the Oval Office, and the other one is the campus. Right? So, no, the Chief of Staff does not know every single person who's on the 18 acres at any given time. They are people who are appropriately either cleared or waved through the system or are escorted on in some way, shape, or form. No, we don't track every single person who's on the 18 acres. Do we know, generally speaking, who's in the Oval Office? Not all the time, because people can go in. But if there was a meeting, in that case, we all sat back here. He made the announcement, and again, you're leaving out a key part. He actually briefed the press before he told anyone. We all found out, you, me, everyone else, that he was coming down here after he held a press conference with your colleagues to say he was coming down here based on stuff that he'd found that didn't have to do with Russia, that a whistleblower source had given him. Now, the other reporting that I'm hearing today is actually that the sources that you describe in your paper are not accurate. And while I'm not going to comment on either, I think there is an assumption that everything and the chronology that we know over is accurate, which I don't believe from further reporting that it is. And I also believe that some of the comments that have come out publicly in terms of some of the Obama administration are conveniently left out of that discussion. I think that that is interesting, how no one seems to really cover the fact that in a senior Obama administration with high-level clearances talked about the spreading of classified information for political purposes, and no one seems to care.
But just to be clear, Mr. Priebus, Mr. Kushner, Mr. Bannon did not have knowledge of his being on the campus having this interaction with national security staff?
I don't know. Again, you asked two questions and you melded them together. No one knew that he was coming to speak to the president. He announced that on television during a press conference. Sean,
my understanding is that Dr. Farkas left the administration in 2015. Why is what she said in 2017 relevant to something that allegedly happened in 2016?
The question I would have for you is exactly, why is it? What is she says in her things, I'm urging my colleagues, I'm urging it to get the Hill, but it's odd that the presumption seems to be, why is it interesting? Have you asked her?
No, you're the one telling us to.
So, but she's been on television talking about what she's done, and you seem to have made no.
I don't believe everything I see on TV.
Well, neither do I. But I also I would assume that as a reporter that actually is interested in this story, a senior Obama administration official that handled Russia, that yeah, well, all Obama administration officials generally.
She wasn't there in 2016.
Thank you. I appreciate the timeline, but I'm well aware of when it was. But my point is you seem to be rushing to her defense. At some point, she went on television and talked about actions that she and her colleagues took to spread classified information. And instead of defending her, it might be worth asking her what she's talking about, who she spread it to, why she did it, was it appropriate, who cleared her to do it. Maybe those are questions that can ask instead of asking me to defend why a former Obama administration official is revealing stuff that should be extremely concerning. So I'm going to go back to Tamara.
One other question, which is, are you more concerned about that or Russian interference in the presidential election?
Well, I think that if I'm, as an American citizen, I'm very concerned about the fact that people potentially were sharing information about other Americans for political purposes and using classified information to do so and leaking it. That should be concerning to everybody. I mean,
The Russian interference?
no, that's not what I said. Please stop trying to. It's not. No.
It's just like, which is worse?
No, and I guess I don't. I mean, the answer is I think if someone's interfering with our election, that's not good. I don't think that someone revealing and leaking classified information is good either. I'm not sure that you should have to choose. I think that you can have outrage and concern for both, and I don't think we should have to pick as an American whether or not which freedom we want to have undermined. I think we should expect both of them. And so the idea that we should have to choose whether or not we want someone to interfere with our election or protect our civil liberties isn't one that we should want or that we should have questioned. Alexis. Jim.
General Flynn's attorney said that his client has a story to tell. Is the White House concerned that General Flynn has damaging information about the president, his aides, his associates, about what occurred during the campaign with respect to Russia?
Nope.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you to follow up on that is, you were just saying a few moments ago that some of this information that would be helpful to the committee, you were talking about Evelyn Farkas and so forth, that seems to be something that pertains to during the transition. But the president's tweets, time and again, talked about tapping my phones in October just prior to the election. Just found out Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. I want to get something clear about the time frame. Does the White House have any information? Is it providing any information to these intelligence committees that would draw these members to the conclusion that there was some kind of surveillance going on before the election, as the president originally alleged?
So again, I don't want to specifically get in, but I think if we're splitting hairs about what day of the calendar it was, that's a pretty interesting development. I think that we have now come to a place where I think that we can.
The president's allegation.
I understand that, but if the allegation is, well, it was actually on the 1st of December or the 10th of December versus the 31st of October, I think that we're starting to split some serious hairs here. The idea that, and again, it's interesting that now we're arguing over the date, not the substance. And the substance is, why were people using government resources, violating civil liberties potentially, looking into people's backgrounds to surveil them, to understand what they were doing and who they were, to unmask them, provide their names and stuff into sources, spread classified information, make it available to others, spread it to places that they weren't supposed to, use it. But hold on, but let me just, I'm sorry. I think that it is interesting because, again, I get your question, but if what we're really arguing is, did it happen on a Monday or a Tuesday, or did it happen on the 31st versus the 7th or the 8th, I think we've lost focus here. There is. Hold on, I'll answer. Just let me finish.
Surveillance and
I understand this,
now
but
the dates are changing.
No, they're not. I didn't say they were changing. Just to be clear, I'm just saying that it is fascinating to me that we are now arguing over the date, not the substance. I understand your point, and if we get down to that, we come out and you really want to get into what date, but I think it is really getting lost in this debate that American citizens who were not government employees at the time, who were not targets of stuff, potentially were surveilled, had their information unmasked, made it available, was politically spread, and all of this, and it should be very concerning to people that an administration or people in an administration, people serving in government who are provided classified information, who are given clearance in the trust of the United States government, misused, mishandled, and potentially did some very, very bad things, with classified information. That astonishes me that that is not the subject of this, that all of this is happening in our country, and yet the subject, and again, we talk about what door someone came in, what date it happened. There is a concern that people misused, mishandled, misdirected, classified information, leaked it out, spread it out, violated civil liberties, and the potential that that happened should concern every single American.
And to follow up on that, I think we are concerned about the substance just as much as the
I mean-
process. But the details matter, but I just want to make sure
Those
that I'm hearing you clearly, because it seems like you're going farther than what we've heard in previous briefings. It sounds like you are, just as the president is, alleging that the Obama administration conducted unlawful surveillance on the Trump campaign and Trump transition team.
What I am saying very clearly is that
You have evidence of that.
No. What I don't. I know that what has been provided to, as I said in the statement, I believe that what has been provided and will be provided to members of both committees, I think should further their investigation. I think that the revelations of Evelyn Farkas, who played a senior role in the Obama administration, going on the record to talk about how they politically used classified information, is troubling. I believe that the reports that are coming out day by day, that NBC just reported, that John just detailed, what Fox has reported, day by day, more and more we are seeing that the substance of what we've been talking about continues to move exactly in the direction that the president spoke about in terms of surveillance that occurred. And that should be very troubling. That, frankly, it should be something that everyone looks at and says, what's going on here? Why did it happen? Who did it? And how are we going to get to the bottom of it? That's what concerns me. Steve Holland.
Sean, we heard from the president this morning saying that Mike Flynn should ask for immunity. We also know the president has longstanding views on what immunity means. I mean, back in September, he said, if you are guilty of a crime, what do you need immunity for? So does the president think that Mike Flynn is guilty of a crime?
I think he believes that Mike Flynn should go testify. He thinks that he should go up there and do what he has to do to get the story out.
With or without immunity?
Well, I mean, that's up to him and his lawyer to decide. I'm not going to give Mike Flynn or anyone else legal advice from the podium, but I will tell you that the president's view is he should go up there, he should testify.
But the president gave legal advice from his Twitter account. He said Mike
I know, but
Flynn
the
should
interesting
ask for immunity.
right, and I
And he
understand.
has said in the past that the only reason you ask for immunity is if you commit a
Right, but I think
crime.
that the underlying point that you're missing, Jonathan, respectfully, is that what he's asking is go testify. Go get it out there. Do what you have to do to get there and tell Congress and tell everyone exactly what we've been saying for a long time. So, I mean, again, I get your point, but I think that the interesting thing is if you actually stop for a second and realize what the president's doing, is that he's saying do whatever you have to do to go up, to make it clear what happened, take whatever precaution you want or however your legal counsel advises you. But again, I've heard in some legal circles that the president could have exerted legal authority with him and Sally Yates and others. It's quite the opposite. And again, I think that compared to the narrative that you hear from a lot of the folks in this room all the time is a little bit opposite. Here you have a president who is telling Mike Flynn and others to go up there, make sure, in fact, we talked about the other day with members of the administration that the president we've made volunteered. This doesn't look at an administration that's not doing everything it can to get to the bottom of this in the appropriate way. And I think that is an important distinction that has been lost on a lot of you, that every action that we have taken, we've got up here and we've talked about Russia and the lack of a connection. We've talked about the fact that every single person who's been briefed has come away saying none exists, Republican, Democrat, Obama appointee, etc. And yet at the end of the day, the narrative still comes at us. And now we're going to the point where we've actually encouraged people to go talk to the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and the appropriate investigators so that they can continue to get to the bottom of this and get it aside from us. I think that's quite the opposite of what you would normally think that somebody who was not trying to get to the bottom would do. Amen.
Can I just ask three basic kind of follow-up factual questions? You've used two phrases here today. One is politically sensitive information and the other is classified information when you're talking about what the president believes was released. Because you said yesterday that you yourself had not seen the information, and that's my understanding as of today, are those terms interchangeable or are they different in terms of what you know from the podium was released?
So there's actually a classification level. There is there's certain sensitive information on individuals. While not classified, is considered stuff that the government protects. Then there's secret, there's top secret, and without getting into it, there's a lot higher. There are differences in classification levels. So while you may not reveal a piece of classified information, what they call PII information is sensitive information according to the government standards. So they are different. Each of them has a different classification level.
Your understanding, you've been told that the material that the president is sharing with the committees includes classified information as well as politically sensitive information. That's your understanding?
Yes.
All right. Second question. You said Congressman Schiff is coming today?
That's I know that he has made contact and is trying to arrange a time.
And can you share with us who will be responsible for escorting him to the proper place, showing him the materials, walking him through it, letting him absorb it? Is he bringing staff? Can you just explain this?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that they were arranging a time, etc. I think it's going to. A lot of it will detail if he is requesting it. I don't know the nature of. I know that the request was made, and that's one that there's follow-up with the staff at the staff level to determine all of those things.
The material that the president has wanted to share with the House and the Senate committees, has it already been shared with the FBI, or did the FBI already have the materials?
I don't know the answer to that. Some of it, I don't know. It's NSC. NSC pulls materials from the various agencies. So where that all came from, and is it single source? Is it a combination of those? I don't know the answer to that.
Answer to that?
I can ask. Again, part of it is there's a question of whether or not we have the ability or the right to release it. And again, as much as I appreciate where it came from, I think again I go back to does it really matter? Does it matter if it came from the CIA or the NSA or another three-letter agency, or is the issue, Alexis, whether or not, as I've said before, whether or not there is a concern about what that information is doing, who used it improperly, what possibly could have happened. I mean, that, again, it's where it came from.
That wasn't clear. What
Yeah.
I'm asking is, the executive branch, the FBI, has a separate investigation. I'm asking, the president believes he has evidence that is germane to that investigation, as broad as Director Comey has described. My only
No,
question.
well, first of all, just so we're clear, the FBI's investigation pertains specifically to, from what the director said in open testimony, to Russia. What the president's, this is not what I believe they are investigating. Or
I misunderstood. I thought that the FBI was also had broadened the investigation beyond just simply Russia.
I don't know. You should. I'm not aware of that.
You could just find
No,
out.
but why? No, you can call the FBI. I don't. I'm not going to call the FBI and ask them what their investigation is, and then you'll write a story about how I called the
I'm
FBI.
asking you a separate question. Does the president believe that it is important for the FBI to have the information that he finds to be so egregiously offensive that classified and politically sensitive information was shared by the previous administration? I'm asking you a really simple
I don't. No,
question.
it's not. You think it's simple, but I think the reality is it depends. If the NSA, where it came from, who can share. You're acting as though it's a very you're acting as though it's a very simple process. It depends on the level of classification, who it came from, whether they have the authority to share it. There's a lot of things that go into this, and I know that it sounds really easy. It's not, and I think that I know that a lot of times that just because it can get leaked out doesn't mean it's being handled appropriately. And I think there is a desire to make sure that this is done correctly and within the proper guidance of who has the authority to see the right things, and that all of the procedures are followed. That doesn't mean we just get to willy-nilly pick stuff